Thank you so much, Paula. That was a wonderful presentation. And I like the way that you put names and faces behind some of the statistic and the research that we so often cite and use. And I'm thrilled that you're able to stay here for the rest of this plenary panel today. Thank you so much. So now it is my pleasure to begin our plenary panel on the 15th anniversary of the Violence Against Women Act. VAWA's passage in 1994 created a paradigm shift in how we view the criminal justice response to violence against women. VAWA made it clear that violence against women in any form would no longer be tolerated, and offenders of these crimes would be held accountable for their criminal actions. The passage of VAWA created a breakthrough through which we would forever change our approach to domestic violence, to sexual assault, and stalking. Now, the heart of VAWA, as many of you know, is the coordinated community response. And what this means is that we cannot approach this crime in isolation. It takes a multidisciplinary approach. We need the cops, we need the prosecutors, we need the victim advocates, the judges, the health officials, and everyone in the community. All of them must be at the table to make this work. Now, to implement the coordinated community response and administer the many grant programs created by the Violence Against Women Act, or VAWA, the Act created the Office on Violence Against Women. And right now, OVW, as we call it, is headed by Judge Susan Carbon, a recent appointee to that post. OVW has awarded more than $4 billion in grants to support issues such as transitional housing for domestic violence victims, legal services for victims, elder abuse, children exposed to violence, violence against tribal women, violence against women with disabilities. Now, I worked in this office for almost 6 years, and I saw firsthand how the grants, the training, the technical assistance made a profound difference in communities around the country. And now for NIJ, VAWA has been a gift from heaven. It created a steady annual stream of funding that has enabled us to build a strong body of research in the area of violence against women that never would have happened without this legislation. Since 1995, NIJ has funded more than 270 studies on violence against women, totaling nearly $80 million. The annual amount has fluctuated from year to year, but I'm happy to say that for FY 2011, we are on course to receive another $3 million to devote to violence against women research. Now, for obvious reasons, I can't go into all the findings, but I can tell you that because of VAWA, we know that protection orders can reduce recidivism if they are tailored to a victim's needs and used with vigorous prosecution and tough punishment for abusers. We know that sexual assault occurs in nearly half of the battering relationships in this country, and we know that 3.4 million people are stalked in the course of just 1 year. So through the research funding afforded by VAWA, we are constantly learning. As a matter of fact, NIJ is holding a stalking workshop tomorrow where we're bringing together researchers and practitioners to examine the critical research questions around stalking and where those gaps continue to exist. And we'll be sure to let you know what we learn. Now, today we've invited a group of dynamic individuals to share with you their thoughts on VAWA, including how VAWA has changed the lives of victims and their families, how it's impacted criminal justice policy and practice, how the research has informed our approaches, and how we should proceed in looking at violence against women over the next 15 years. So I'm going to introduce to you our panelists, and I'm going to ask each one of them, after I say your name, if you could come up to the stage and have a seat here. Now, one woman is expected to show up any minute. Her name, she emailed me right before the session started and said, "I'm on my way, get started. I'll join you when I get there." And when I tell you who she is, you'll realize why she's so busy. Her name is Lynn Rosenthal, and Lynn is the White House Advisor on Violence Against Women in the Office of the Vice President, the first time that this position has existed. Lynn is a longtime advocate for victims of sexual assault and domestic violence and has been the director of a women's shelter, the director of the Florida Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and most recently she was the executive director of the National Network to End Domestic Violence. So we will welcome Lynn as soon as she walks through those doors. The next person I'd like to introduce is Catherine Pierce. Catherine is currently the senior advisor to the administrator of the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention at the Office of Justice Programs. Now, up until just a week ago, Catherine had been with the Office on Violence Against Women, and she had been there since the office was created back in 1995. She served as deputy director there, and she served 2 stints as acting director of the office. And there are few people who have a better understanding of the impact of VAWA than Catherine Pierce. I'd like to ask Michael Paymar to come up to the stage. Michael is an early leader in the battered women's movement, and he was first elected in 1996 to serve in the Minnesota House of Representatives. He's the chair there of the Public Safety Finance Committee, where he has fiscal oversight over the courts, over the Department of Corrections, the Department of Public Safety, Department of Human Rights, and all the crime victim programs. And in his day job, he's the resource specialist for the Battered Women's Justice Project. Karen, why don't you come on up? Karen Carroll is a sexual assault nurse examiner, or a SANE, and she is the associate director of the Bronx Sexual Assault Response Team. She trains police and prosecutors and other professionals on sexual assault and the role of the SANE in the criminal justice system. She is a survivor of rape and has used her experience to improve the treatment of rape victims all across our country. Barney, why don't you come on up? Barney Malekian is the director of the Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services, or as we call it, the COPS Office. His mission there is to advance the practice of community policing around the country. Prior to his appointment at COPS, he was the police chief in Pasadena, California for 13 years, and he was with the Santa Monica Police Department for 23 years, where he was awarded the Medal of Valor in 1978 and the Medal of Courage in 1980. Now, each panelist is going to present for 5 minutes, and afterwards I will pose a few questions to the panelists, and then I'm going to open it up to all of you so that you'll have a chance to ask some questions. Lynn, welcome. You, perfect timing. I already introduced you. You are. So Lynn, why don't you come on up? Okay.
Yes.